So today we have two guest speakers from the Interstate Renewable Energy Council, Mary Lawrence, who's the Assistant Director of Workforce Development, and Joe Ruby, who is the Technical Education Training and Workforce Development Consultant. Mary, if you don't mind taking it from there.
Sure. Thanks so much, Diane, and welcome everyone. We're really excited to be here. IREC is a nonprofit that's been around for about 40 years now, working in the renewable energy space. And so our work in career maps spans about a decade. Actually, our first one was the solar career map. We did one for the HVAC industry, called the Careers in Climate Control Technology. And our latest one is the Green Buildings Career Map, which we'll sort of use as our example today. So I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Joe Ruby, who's going to do a PowerPoint presentation and give a little bit of background information on career maps in general. And then I'll take over again and give you a live demonstration, which is the best way to view the map. So Joe, do you want to take over and share your screen?
Absolutely. Mary, thank you. And thank you for giving us the opportunity to present on career maps here. So I'm going to share my screen and go right into. Can everybody see my screen? Okay.
Yes.
Beautiful. All right. So obviously there's Mary and I, and you talking about career maps. We think it's a powerful tool. We're going to talk some of the details about the reason why we think it's a powerful tool as we move forward here. And why isn't my mouse all of a sudden working? There we go. I'd like to start first, talk a little bit about choice. And interestingly, when you think about millennials, almost half of them today wished that if they had a chance to do it all over again, they would have taken a different career path. And when you think about the millennials and the time that they started to get into the workforce, or even prior to the workforce, the argument was, hey, graduate from high school, right? Go to college, get a 4-year degree, and when you're done, there's going to be a ton of opportunities there for you. I think we've learned that that wasn't the case for a lot of them. And so a lot of them end up taking jobs that maybe they weren't originally thinking that they would do, and now they wish they had a chance to do it all over again. So a lot of what we're going to be talking about with career maps is around choice. And using myself as an example, coming out of high school a long time ago, I had a choice. I could have went to college, had multiple opportunities. I was pretty good in sports, but I chose to be an electrician like my older brother, 6 years older than me, was working in the field for a long time. When I was a young boy, I was drilling holes, pulling wire, mounting boxes, making connections, and loved the work. So I chose to go down that path. It wasn't until later in life that I realized that I had a passion for working with young minds and got into teaching. And so that's when I went back and got my degrees. And I think a lot about what we're going to show with career maps is that having a vision, I think could really help people in a lot of ways when they're choosing a job. I had no clue I could even teach my actual career. I was working as an electrician. It was my next door neighbor who told me. He happened to be an instructor from BOCES, and he said, you know, Joe, you could really teach your career, you know, as an electrician. And that's how I found out, just happenstance, from my neighbor next door. So today, yeah, we're going to show the Green Buildings Career Map as we focus on the green economy and the opportunities around that. And I'm going to get you to pay attention to what I'm terming new collar jobs. I kind of stole that from Ginny Rometty, who was the original or CEO of IBM a number of years ago. She has since retired, but she actually came up with the term for new collar jobs. And the way she used it, I said, you know what, that kind of works for what we want to talk about in reference to a lot of jobs that would allow people to move into without a 4-year degree. So I'm going to start getting into that, but why career maps? All right, first and foremost, It's a great tool as an awareness opportunity. There's a lot of things that people don't know about jobs in the green world and the green economy. So the opportunity to show a whole bunch of different jobs, I think, gives people that vision. You know, our focus in this particular area is around green buildings. There's a tremendous amount of opportunity just in the green economy outside of just green buildings. But in this particular case, for this career map, the focus was on how do we make buildings greener? Who's working in that space? And how do I go about getting a job in that area? And how could I advance within that? What's also interesting is some of the latest studies shows 9 out of 10 millennials also believe career path progression is important when they're choosing a job, which kind of aligns now with the first kind of stat that I showed on the other map. And again, knowing that more than half of them believe that if the company they're working for doesn't have some type of career path progression for them, there's a good chance they're going to leave them. And so this becomes a critical part of the retention side for companies. And when I talk about career maps, I'd like to also talk about it under the understanding of what I call career GPS. I'm sure a lot of you have heard that term before, but yeah, we all have smartphones. And when we want to go from point A to point B, we point, we plug in where we're trying to go. And we've got that nice map that kind of takes us right to that location. And it happens to be a lot of times a number of different paths. So for me, I believe people should have a definitive plan if they're going to reach their goals, because I'm a real visual person. I believe you can't be what you can't see. And the opportunity to have that visual of that opportunity will help people a long way of going down that path. We believe that our particular career maps happen to be extremely engaging and interactive. To have a tool, when I worked in the construction trades, we always talked about the right tool for the right job. You know, I'm going to show different audiences and how they could potentially use it in a minute. But to me, having something that you can engage people with, I think is really, really important to be able to sit down with them and show them. But they're also extremely intuitive. And we believe our maps are so intuitive that you can just give it to somebody and it won't take them long to figure out when they're doing some career exploration. All right. So the other neat thing, again, is it is for a broad audience. There's a lot of different stakeholders within the industry, and I'm going to show that in the next slide here, and how best to use the career maps. But when you think about it, we've got the students or job seekers, whether it's a displaced worker, somebody coming out of high school, maybe they just went back and got their GED and have been out of work for a while, again, a displaced worker, or somebody who's just looking to change careers. Great for counselors, whether it's guidance counselors or career counselors. Teachers and educators can utilize career maps as part of their program, whatever they're teaching, and showing students opportunities. It also helps teachers explain to students why they're learning what they're learning when they see the different jobs and the skill sets and requirements around those jobs and what's needed per se. So it's great for teachers and educators, certainly employers. I mean, I can't believe when I was at the college for 32 years, I was a professor and department chair up at Hudson Valley Community College in upstate New York. All the open houses I went to for career days, or not only Hudson Valley's career days, but also some of the high school career days. And having something, would have been neat to have something back then that would be able to just attract students and show them opportunities, either to come into my program or to go on and get a specific job. So employers can take full advantage of this to be able to either recruit or return, help with retention, working through the HR personnel. And then on top of that, even policymakers, a lot of them don't even know all the different jobs within a specific industry and a sector. And that could help a lot, just seeing those different jobs as they're trying to determine what type of funding and what type of programs they're looking to get off the ground. So it becomes extremely informative in that case. So I will tell you, what you see on this page is a condensed version of what, if I was doing a webinar for an hour, or if I was with a particular company or organization who wanted to really do deep dives, I could spend a lot of time in each one of these areas. For this particular presentation, it's just a quick overview for everybody to get a sense that this is a great tool that can be used in a lot of different ways if you know how to use it best. And on a last note, I will tell you, the most success are the ones who are deep diving grassroots effort within organizations, companies, or schools. Having those champions on the ground are the ones who help make it mostly successful. So with that, because of time, this gives you a picture right now, the Green Buildings career map. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can turn it over to Mary, who's going to start showing you all the different parts of the career map. And I'm going to jump back in on a few parts of it as well. So Mary, you want to take over?
Okay, let's do this quick transition here. So I have the exciting part of this presentation. I get to actually show you the live map. We always prefer to go live when we do these presentations. It's exciting to see the map actually do the interactive piece of it as opposed to just showing pictures. So as Joe showed in the presentation slide, this is what the map looks like on the home page. And all of these dots represent a job title. And so when you hover over it, it actually highlights what that title is. The jobs are organized by industries. So you can see the 4 different sections for the green buildings industry, and they're also organized bottom to top from entry level, mid-level, and advanced. So it gives a really great visual snapshot of what the sort of layout of this of these jobs look like. For the green buildings career map, we actually were able to fit 55 jobs. You can imagine if you put too many on here, it's a little bit overstimulating visually, but 55 worked really well and is actually more than we've been able to put on other maps. So we were excited about that. So if I go ahead, the sort of super exciting thing that happens is when you click on one of these buttons, you actually get this action that takes place. So for this insulation air sealing technician position, when I click on that bubble, the lines appear and actually show you the advancement routes. So this is this is sort of the key piece, that this isn't just looking at jobs, it's looking at careers, and exactly what Joe was mentioning, that it allows people to have a vision of where they can go. So a specific company might have multiples of these jobs that someone might be able to see themselves move into. There's obviously the ability to move not just up in a given sector, but actually across sectors as well. So if I actually click on this box for job details, it takes me to a whole page that's designated specifically for this job title, gives more in-depth information. There's also information in this sidebar here that talks about salary range, education and training, work experience that might be required, and some skills and requirements to do the job well. There's different navigations here that allow you to actually jump to additional jobs just by clicking the arrow in the top right, or you can actually go back to the map and check things out in this visual page again. A couple of additional tabs. So this main page pops you out on the advancement routes. There's actually a tab here that talks about multi-sector advancement routes. This actually takes you all the way through a potential career pathway and shows the growth that you might have in the transition into additional sectors. So you can imagine someone starting as a building performance installer, and with time, experience, additional education, they might be able to move all the way into a building performance diagnostician. So there's several of these that are all that show additional pathways. These are real pathways. These are things that our working group and our subject matter experts show as real possibilities for job growth. New collar jobs, I'll show this tab. I'll let Joe chime in if he wants to go a little bit more in depth on this one. He mentioned new collar jobs as jobs that don't require that 4-year degree. These are jobs that you can get through other sorts of technical training, through some certificates, and you don't have to go on to get a bachelor's degree. And there's a lot of them here. You can see there's 32 jobs out of the 55. And from top to bottom, all the way from entry level, as well as an advanced level position on this map, you might be able to get without that 4-year degree. Joe, do you want to chime in about this?
Yeah, folks, again, when I think about, thank you, Mary, new collar jobs, Ginny Ramati had said that IBM realized that they didn't need people with 4-year degrees. They needed people with good skill sets and credentials. And this is where she said, hey, you know, can we just make sure that they have the right skill sets and competencies coming into work, and that 4-year degrees weren't necessarily required. And I said, you know, that kind of parlays well into a lot of industries and a lot of sectors, and certainly within the green buildings area. As Mary showed, of the 55 jobs, we have these many that do not require a bachelor's degree. And what's really neat, there's a lot of them that don't require any degree at all. So Mary, if you were to click the bottom the right-hand column, that particular job, right? That's a entry-level position, somebody with a high school diploma, GED. If you click that job, you can see some of the advancement routes. Now going up in the same sector, just for fun, the top job in the middle on the right, Mary, if you could then go, no, I'm sorry, not that one, right? In the intermediate, right there. Click
Oh,
the
yeah.
one that was that, yep. All right, and click that job now. So I went from a basic installer to a crew leader. And then if you go all the way up to the top one in that same vertical on the left-hand side.
Left-hand side, got it.
Yep, exactly. I'm sorry. Click that one. There's somebody who started their own business, became a building performance contractor, doing quite well for themselves. And we hear across the nation over and over, so many people who've done that, started a business, got their feet wet, started to do some of the basic, you know, insulation, caulking, sealing, learning about the job, eventually became a crew leader because they had those good leadership skills. They were motivated, did that for a few years, got their feet wet, understanding the business and what have you, and then decided, you know what? I'm going to buy a truck and I'm going to start my own business. And so many of them go down that path. I'm sharing that because a lot of the jobs here don't require almost any degree, and they can really advance into some wonderful jobs that pay significantly well. It's getting them to see that vision. And that's what we talk about. So working with students and say, well, yeah, you'll start here, you put some time in, and then you can advance to these different areas. And the more we can give them that vision of the future, the better chances are that they will decide to jump into that job and hopefully make a career out of it, and, you know, keep with that particular career for years to come. But again, following up on Mary, one last thing, the idea to not necessarily have to just go vertical, but to go over into a number of different sectors in areas that they never even thought. I'll give you an example. If somebody got into maybe building automation and they were working for an HVAC company and they were doing all the installations, all of a sudden the boss realizes that they would make a great salesperson and that they migrated them into sales. And then they end up becoming a salesman of some, you know, whether for Train or, you know, some other large manufacturer as well, where they're traveling around the country, selling equipment, making a lot of money that they never even would have envisioned that they could do that. But with a map to kind of show them and give them a chance to follow their passion, I think this is a pretty valuable tool. So thank you, Mary. You want to continue?
And I think, you know, it's sort of a theme, and I don't think we can say the messaging too much. I feel like Joe, especially just because of his background and me after working on these career maps for so long, we really want to emphasize and change how people think about the construction trades industry. This isn't about, like Joe said, that you make because you couldn't cut it in a four-year degree program, that you ended up doing some sort of trades. And I think these maps really highlight that, not only in the sort of visual aspect here, but that they're interactive. It shows growth. It shows really impressive salaries. It shows the high skill level that some of these mid-level and advanced level positions require. So these are really high quality jobs. These are jobs that people choose, and not ones that they just fall into because they can't cut it somewhere else. So a couple of other just things to point out, aspects of the map. There is this legend over here that if you expand, it actually shows all of the job titles. So you can see when I hover over them, it actually highlights on the map. So this is a good way to actually see the list of job titles here. Each one of them opens up and shows what those titles are for that sector. And then at the top, there are some high-level navigation web pages within the map about this industry, or I'm sorry, about this map, about this industry. I'll click on this one. This one does have some additional expanding boxes here that give descriptions of the actual sectors that we've chosen for the map. We also have a resources page, which I'm not sure there's so many resources on here. We've tried to organize it for folks into different sections, everything from government agencies to veteran resources. There's also information targeting specific target populations, different associations and things that support people of color, Native American populations, things like that. And then lastly, the frequently asked questions, just helps folks understand some of the foundational information of how the map was built and why. So really, really great tool. And actually the last thing that I'll mention, I'm actually going to do a new share here and take us back to Joe's presentation. See if I can get myself into the presentation mode. We do have as I mentioned, we do have two other maps in addition to the Green Buildings career map. So the first one that we developed was the solar career map. Honestly, that one, I think we're probably going on 5 or 6 years ago now, Joe. I feel like that one's been out a really long time and has a great following in terms of folks who really utilize that as a tool. The one that we did in the middle here is the careers in climate control technology, which is an overview of the HVAC and refrigeration industry. This one came from some funding out of California. So some of the salary information and things is a little bit more targeted to that region. But the solar career map and the green buildings career map are more national information. So yeah, these are really, really important tools to showing growth and giving folks a vision for what their career in these industries might look like. And at this point, Joe, if there's anything else that you want to chime in with, but we're happy to open it up for questions if folks want to come off of mute, or we can engage folks in the chat as well.
Perfect, Miriam. Let's do some Q&A. See if we got any thoughts out there on this.
Great. Christina says she loves it.
Great.
We love that you love it. That's great. And so while folks are thinking, I can, Joe, there's some questions that folks often come up with, so we can share some of that more in-depth information. One is about the salary information. Often folks wonder about where we came up with the salary information.
Yeah, thank you, Mary. Truly, we do our best to use the Bureau of Labor Statistics, right, the BLS. When they have a a database for a specific job title, it makes it easy. But there's a lot of job titles that they haven't yet created a database for. So in that particular case, we had to pick 8 different regions around the country to do our best to then do an average for salaries. And that's why we gave a range. Obviously, salaries in New York City might be a lot higher than, say, in upstate New York or in somewhere in Arkansas or Mississippi for the same type of job, more in a rural area. So for us, given a range at least shows folks that depending upon where you are, there could be a difference. And even within a specific region, I mean, we could be in San Francisco, then right outside San Francisco, and still see a significant difference as well. So a little bit of a challenge around that, but that's why we gave a range.
Can I jump in? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, Mary and Joe, this was really great. Really appreciate the work you're doing. Okay, this is Dave Heppenstall from AEA.
Hi, Dave.
How you doing?
Good. Haven't seen you in a while or talked to you in a long time.
Right. So there's one dimension that I'm wondering, and that is that for new workers, we have traditionally focused on an issue called work readiness. And a lot of it relates to behavior. What I found hiring employees, that their advancement is also dependent upon an upgraded, whatever that dimension of the commitment, okay, not just the skill set. So have you tried to bring that variable into the picture at all?
For us, we haven't at this particular level, just because of the funding stream when we get money from the Department of Energy per se, right? And there's specific task and goal associated with that. But that's an interesting question and one that I think certainly needs to be addressed, that worker readiness. Many employers are finding that, yeah, even if there's a program where you can take somebody and that was some grant funding or foundational funding would pay for that person to start in that job, if they don't have that worker readiness, they end up leaving, or the company says they're not ready to do this work.
But I'm really looking at it as the next phase. So worker readiness, I think there's been more exploration of that issue, but who's going to reach how high is also dependent upon a series of behaviors, not just the skills.
No, I don't disagree. And those are great points. When you think about, in my mind, I think about, where we are even within our country and where people's heads are around work. I mean, think about November, right? 4.5 million people quit their jobs. And why? What's going on with the behavior around that is affecting that? And so to me, I think even the construction industry, which right now is desperate for workers, and even these kind of jobs within the construction industry, which this is more of a focus of, to me, a lot of green work is basically, it's like another tool in the toolbox for the construction workers, right? They are learning how to install things in a more green way, for keeping it simple. But to me, we haven't really put enough emphasis on making these jobs sound more valued, where people will say, this is a great thing. I'm looking forward to this. Coming out of high school, I'm really excited about wanting to work in this particular industry, as far as that behavior and that mindset, and the fact that they can aspire to do great things within the industry. I don't believe there's not enough, at this point, there's enough work in that particular area. We have not put time into that per se, unfortunately, but I hear exactly what you're saying.
Thanks.
Yeah.
So Rebecca, I see your hand raised. Would you like to come off mute and ask your question?
I would love to. Thank you.
Thank
you, Mary. Joe, we met a long time ago when I was doing green jobs training. I'm a carpenter by trade and worked for the union, learned how to be an educator through their apprenticeship program and beyond. And nice to see you, David, as well.
Good to see you again, Rebecca.
It's been a while. This career map's brilliant. I think it answers a lot. We used to imagine the lattice. We talked about the lattice, and certain education can move you over and up. And so, happens. David spoke about just now, like almost like a common denominator, getting people work ready. I want to speak on that, but really I have a different question on that. That's a failure of our society writ large.
Mhm.
And that failure is sort of coming through a history of colonialism, racism, white supremacy. Go on down the list of the isms. We're now recognizing that people didn't get equal access to fulfill their potential for so many reasons at young age. Being not work ready is sometimes mixed up with a lot of other things. So we can't fix all of that here, but I think a lot of the job training programs that are here look at some of that too. That's a social problem we have to fix in all places. So let's presume people are finding their passion and have an idea of what they want to do. I want to really talk about ownership and control of some of these companies. And what does it look like to move up in a way that lets people think about running some of the work? And I'm glad that you pulled out the piece of the, I forget what the first job was, but when they went to the top to become the contractor, one of the things that I'm very busy promoting now is cooperative ownership and management, and looking at how people together can overcome some of those hardships that come out of the isms we're familiar with, and because they don't have access to money and all the private equity, and say, actually, we have enough skills to run the business. So I wanted to see if there's skill training in there for business ownership and management, and to really look at that shift of an economy that says when we don't all have to work for somebody else, we can be the people who employ and be part of sort of driving those jobs. Is some of that built into this in terms of the training that people would need to advance?
You know, Rebecca, that's a great question in the sense that the focus on training, when we develop a national map, all right, one of the real challenges around that is where do you decide and what type of training should you offer through that process? Because training is so regional, local, whatever, very geographic oriented, right? So if I lived, say, in New York City, or if I lived in Albany, if I wanted to get some training, I'd be looking around places in Albany as opposed to New York City, and vice versa, right? So for us, we were very careful not to put specific training programs or focuses on training. In other words, our goal was let the educators say, hey, I'm working with students who want to work in this area. What do they need to get to that level? And then, you know, let them work on the best practices around that particular area so that we don't overload the career map with a million different training groups or organizations or companies, because it would at that point become, you know, overwhelming. So we identify the skills necessary for that particular job, and then that will allow people then to do their own research or working with their educators, trying to find out what do I need to do to make sure I have those skill sets that I can aspire to that job, if that's helpful.
And just to build on that, the skill sets of owning and running and putting together companies, including cooperative ones, which I think help solve some other large social problems. We don't have enough of those places. Some people do choose to go to business administration or get an MBA, but there are, we all can name a business owner or 10 who never went to college and are very successful. And so trying to think about how we can help people, and community colleges are great for some of that, but really helping to free people to think how to run the businesses, I think, is an important set of skills that we can identify. I'm not sure if that's identified in that career map.
Yeah.
No, yeah, and I think the goal was to find that balance between, and I guess this is reiterating what Joe said, but to find that balance between creating a tool that can be widely enough used by folks all across the country, and leave the more specific guidance to, honestly, groups and agencies like yourselves and educators, nonprofits who support people as they make transitions into a career or seeking careers after school. And so, that's where the local information is. And that sort of information is just like nearly impossible to capture in a tool like this, while still making it usable by others in other areas, So I do have a couple of other questions here before we run out of time. Some folks were asking, I'm going to go back to the map here for a second. Some folks were asking about the links to the other career maps. And I wanted to highlight, I think I forgot to do this previously, down at the bottom. I'm going to click on this for a second and it's going to open up another tab. I think you still should be able to see it, but there's a page on IREC's website that's specific to our career maps. So if you click on that link at the bottom of any three of our maps, actually, it will take you to this general page, and you can access all three of our maps from this location. It gives brief information about the map, as well as obviously the links to get into those maps. So that's a good place if you sort of forget what the links are to any one of them. Checking out IREC's website and the link that's at the bottom of each of the maps is a great way to find them. Someone else was asking about the resources. So if you missed that and I was going too quickly, up at the very top of the map, there are 4 high-level navigation items about this map, about this industry, resources, and frequently asked questions. In this resources page here is the location of like more organizations than you can even imagine, and links, short description and links to those resources for folks to access in a variety of topics. So I wanted to touch on those. Let's see, let me go back. There were a few other, there was one woman who indicated, which I was super excited to hear about, that she's actually been using the solar career map with her high school students in their CTE program, their solar CTE program. Super excited, Sarah, I might actually touch base with you. We're trying to sort of break into that audience of the CTEs. I would love to hear how you're utilizing it so that we can hear about some best practices and share that with others. Let's see, there were
There's one that says, what is the best age from Dewana Hughes, to introduce you to this tool? I would say 9th grade is a great, I mean, middle school is early in one sense. I mean, as far as the map, kids today are pretty savvy technically, obviously. So there is that possibility at the middle school, but they're usually not thinking about careers, I would imagine at that point. But 9th grade now, all of a sudden becomes important. And just even having conversations with family members or whatever, 9th grade would be the latest I would start. And then certainly for the students who are moving towards seniors and haven't quite figured out what they want to do with their life, that would be a great opportunity. But all through high school, and if there's a great opportunity within middle school, it's getting people aware of these kind of jobs out there and just getting them excited about it. So it's a good question. I know I want to be careful of our time with Carrie.
Yeah, thanks for checking in, Joe. Yeah, if there's another question up there you want to answer, we have a little bit of wiggle room here if you do.
Okay, it looks like there was one more. Someone asks about the apprenticeship tab that was on the map. I don't know, let's see, who was that asked that? There isn't a specific map to apprenticeships specifically on this map. Joe, I don't know if you want to share thoughts on how apprenticeships are represented in these maps, and specifically the green buildings.
Right. I think maybe, it was mentioned under the new collar jobs tab when we talk about people, the different opportunities and ways that they can get education and training, and apprenticeships being one, vocational technical schools, other, on-the-job training. In that particular area, we do mention apprenticeships. And again, this is going back to new collar jobs that don't require a 4-year degree. And like I said, in many cases, don't require a 2-year degree. And apprenticeships would fall into that particular category. So we don't highlight any specific apprenticeship per se, other than say that could be a path that you could take to get some of these skills to be able to move down the road on a career journey in this environment.
And I'm not sure, I can't remember specifically if it's on the green buildings career map, but I do believe that it's true, I think on the HVAC map for sure, that journey level positions are represented in some of these specific job titles. So it's sort of acknowledged and I think it is the HVAC map where that's specifically identified.
Mary, actually in the commercial as well under the insulators area, because there's opportunity to go through an apprenticeship for installation and become a journey person in that particular case.
Yeah, so apprenticeships, while not specifically called out in any huge way, they are definitely represented naturally in the jobs that we have on all three of these maps.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we exhausted our time here.
I did. I think so.
We could have you a lot longer because there's a lot of interest here, and I knew there would be. So thank you so much for taking the time. I know you both have another presentation today, so we really appreciate you squeezing in our group. And I'm sure you will get a lot of follow-up questions. We'll share your contact information if that's okay with you.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Folks, thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Take care, folks.
Yeah,
Bye-bye
everyone,
now.
join me in thanking them.
Good seeing you
Thanks,
again,
folks.
Dave and Rebecca.
you.
Take care.
Thank you.
Good job,
Okay.
guys.
All right. So before we move on to our activity, I just wanted to invite Jen Mitchell back to talk about a recent mayoral announcement. Jen, I can't see you, but
I'm here. Hi. We should make sure, I'm sure many people on this meeting call Zoom already saw the announcement and everything, but wanted to make sure for anyone that hadn't. And I realized, I think I saw before, both Julia and Ellie are both on from the city. So they probably have way more information. Mayor Adams made a whole announcement about the consolidation of 4 city agencies into one called the Mayor's Office of Climate and Environmental Justice. He also announced 3 pretty well-known names in the climate justice space to be in leadership positions in that office. Rohit Agarwala as Chief Climate Officer, Kizzy Charles Guzman as Executive Director, and Vincent Sapienza as Chief Operating Officer. And so we can drop the press release in the...
Yep, we did. Oh, you muted, Jen.
But sorry, I went on mute somehow. But just wanted to make sure that I think, we think of the Green Economy Network as kind of sharing information and resources, and this is pretty hot off the presses, and we will work really hard to get one or more of those folks to visit us at a upcoming Green Economy Network meeting, but wanted to make sure everybody was aware of this big and appearingly really positive change. And I don't know, and not to put either of them on the spot, but if Julia or Ellie have any information they want to add to that, of course, feel free to.
I think you pretty much covered it. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, great. I think you pretty much covered it. I think we're really excited about the name change and the consolidation. We have been working together across sustainability and resiliency, but it can only get better. And our leadership is really knowledgeable. They've been in the city for a long time and understand what the issues are. And I also recommend, if you have time watching the announcement, there were some really incredible speeches that talk a little bit about sort of the future and the general directions of where we're going. And I think that it'll be definitely relevant to many of you here. So I'll put that in the chat.
Great.
Julia, anything else?
No, I think you got it, Ellie. We're excited and optimistic and waiting for more details. So we don't have a lot more truly to share.
Well, thank you both for being here. And we will look to you to keep us posted on these kind of things as well.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. So we planned an activity to kind of roll up our sleeves with you all and continue with the network design. I know some folks had indicated they need to leave early. If you did, this is a good transition time, but we would like you all to stay and help with this next section. So let's see, how many people are we? We were debating if we should do a full room activity or break into groups. We're pretty sizable. I don't know. Dave, what do you think? Should we try a full room or breakout?
I think we can try a full room, and if it becomes unwieldy, we can totally break out, but this way we can hear everyone's voices.
Okay, good. Yeah, I'd like everyone to hear each other's thoughts. So we're building off of, you saw, you know, a good deal of information from the folks at IREC and the career maps. You see, it's a really interactive tool, and it's an incredible resource for those of you doing training, direct service, thinking about how to guide people who know very little about green building careers, and those who are curious know a little bit or more curious, and even those people who are in the sector already in a starting place and don't really know where to go and what their skills might translate into. So we developed a Jamboard. I don't know if Dave, if you dropped it in chat. That link should be open to everyone. And let me share it on my screen as well, so we could all see together in real time while you all are adding on it. Let me hope my screen sharing works now. Okay. Can everyone see the Jamboard?
Yes.
Thumbs up. Good. Okay. And hopefully you can open it on your end. So we put some thought questions here based on what we just heard from the folks at IREC, and thinking about the Green Economy Network, what we've been talking about for the past year, what you all do. The main questions up top there. So we're going to start with, and if you haven't used Jamboard before, let me just do a quick walkthrough there. So there's this thing here that when you hover over it, it says sticky note. If you click on it, a sticky note pops up. You could change the color of it if you want, you don't have to, and you could just type here. And once you start typing, it comes up save. So once you've typed something you like, you hit save, and it will get added to the Jamboard here. If you can't read something, you want to make it bigger, you could just stretch that there. But we're going to start by asking you, thinking about these maps, how can you use them exactly as they are? And if not exactly as they are, what different maps might help with you right now and how you're working? The other stickies that we put there are just building on those thought questions. You could answer those, ignore those, but I'd love if you all just jumped right into the Jamboard as you're thinking about it and add sticky notes. Oh, good, it's working. I see some things happening.
And while people are adding notes, if anyone has some thoughts that are, or experiences that are better shared verbally, feel free to share those while people are putting their notes in. Experiences, questions, suggestions, any of the above.
While folks are thinking and not writing, we can read what's been put down so far. So or if somebody, whoever put this down, I'd love to hear other voices than mine. If you want to come off mute and read what you're putting on here. Christine, I'll call on you because I see it says KCC, so I know who put that one.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. I forgot we didn't put our names. So I also put it into the chat, but this is something that KCC has been using for a while, is we created our own career and education maps for our non-degree programs. And we've had a lot of success with utilizing them, particularly in our youth programs, so our 18 to 24-year-old programs, when a lot of them are coming to us having a GED or HSC, and they're not quite sure what pathway they want. So it definitely works, I think, with a younger population. I've also found it useful to use with CBOs. If they come to us and say, we have grant funding and we have, what pathways would you recommend? I show them the maps, and I think it's a great talking point. It's something to use that's engaging. It's non-threatening. It's easy to understand as long as it's created and designed. And the way that IREC has it, I've used theirs too, just to see how they've done it. I think as long as you can find an easy way to explain the information that's not overwhelming, I found it to work, like I said, with guidance counselors, high school guidance counselors, the students themselves, especially our ESL learners, because a lot of it's visual, and then the CBO partners. We've just found it all around to work really well. And my thought, being in the wraparound training group, is that this is one of the wonderful connections that we can use, because I think it's also good for them to come to, whenever we design the Kumu, they could see where there's a gap that they're missing maps, because of they could do a search and see, wow, look at all these training programs. We don't have a map for this, and that could help them design. Those are my thoughts.
That's great. Thank you, Christine. Others, I see we've had some good things added. Anyone want to read theirs out loud? I see Solar One. Did you add that, Sarah?
Yeah, I added it. I was just talking to one of my team members, and actually we have been using more than just the solar map as well, but just with our, 14 to 18-year-old students, it's really helpful for them, even if they're doing, what is primarily a hands-on hard skills training with us, to see the different pathways, because a lot of students might think, oh, I'm really interested. I really like using computers, or I maybe want to think about architecture or design. And when they see those different pathways in the industry, it's helpful for them to visualize it. So I found it to be a great tool. Also a great tool with the during the pandemic and needing to do virtual instruction and virtual programs that are interactive. It's been super helpful. But yeah, I also just really appreciate the notes about the idea of mapping barriers. I feel like that would be really interesting.
Great, thank you. I'm busy looking at people talking, so I don't know what's been added. Dave, anything you'd want to call out, or anyone else who, oh, wait, Dwana, I see you raised your hand.
Yes. Did you perhaps introduce us to this as a resource to integrate into our tool, that, our online workable tool? Do you think it could be something that we could integrate?
I'll let Dave speak. Yeah.
In the technical sense of integration, it would probably be a little tricky at this point, but in the more general sense of, we can check out this tool and link to it in the tool that we're creating, so that people can see, oh, okay, this is how it makes sense. Then I think definitely that as a useful thing. Yeah. And any other tools of this kind that people know of. I know Christine shared one in the chat. Those we can all link to in our tool, and hopefully someday we can in the full technical sense, integrate these things into our work so that we have a New York specific version of this.
Thank you, Twana. Anyone else that added a sticky, or anyone want to share thoughts, questions, even if you didn't add a sticky? There's some great feedback here, I think, both showing on the asset side and the gap side. And this can really contribute to, Diane, the asset mapping conversation that you've been having in the training and wraparound group, and thinking about those questions after seeing the career maps and how they operate. I think that could really help us with the Kumu mapping.
Yes, I agree. Yeah, I
Good
do.
activity here. Love to hear voices.
And of course, as always, happy to have people continue adding to this after the conversation. And we will, of course, share a link to this in the follow-up for anyone who didn't get to join the session today.
And Dave, if we might send a reminder for that link for the program mapping questions summarization link that was shared earlier for folks to review after the meeting and add any questions that they think would be useful in the mapping tool, just as a reminder.
Absolutely, yes. Good point, Diane. Thank you.
All right, do we want to look at the next Jamboard? Dave, you want to? Let me see, I got it here. Want to walk us through this one?
Yes, so very similar in overall, but this part we're thinking more about how we can use this not internally as much, but rather when we are connecting the network to external members, especially job seekers on one hand and employers on the other. Both job seekers or employers who are already one way or another in the green economy, and also those who have not entered the green economy at all yet, but are thinking about it, whether they're employers who maybe whatever their business is kind of part of the green economy, but they don't really think about themselves that way. Like maybe they make parts that are key or design software that's key for electric vehicles and chargers and whatnot, or people who are have worked in the green economy, but don't think about that way. Like if they've worked a lot in HVAC. So thinking about on both these ends, how we could use, again, these exact maps or one similar to them to show people the potential of green jobs, potential of the green economy network, or other possibilities about what they could do with the skills or experience or knowledge that they already have.
Did you drop the link for this one, or is it the same one as before to get into this board?
This is the same Jamboard. This is just slide 2.
Oh, okay. So I didn't know that.
Sorry, I should have mentioned that. I know a lot of you are using Jamboard for the first time. I think especially about what Joe was saying about the focus on skills, and for these career maps, one of the things that I find most useful is showing people how their skills can help them to change into different positions, not just their actual experience within the kind of work that they're doing. So sometimes the jumps are rather obvious, but sometimes they are significantly less obvious. And the more that we can think about those less obvious jumps, the more opportunities that we can show people are available for their careers. And of course, the more that we can understand how those of us in the network can work with each other, and those entities not in the network, how we can connect better with them.
Dave, this is Rebecca. You said skills, but there's also something I've identified, like proclivities, what somebody would be good at if they knew more about it. So the skills for a salesperson sometimes might be someone who's really got the gift of gab, but they're not in the position to sell something, so they don't understand what their gift is can fit in a career in sales. And they may be accused of talking too much if they're working with their tools, but could do something really different. Another one is financial management. Some people are really good at that, but don't have a lot of money to manage. So you don't know that they're good at that until they're in a situation with large numbers on a spreadsheet that matter to them. So there's a lot of things about proclivities that need skill enhancement, but certain people are attracted to certain types of jobs.
Good point, Rebecca. Jobs First has been doing some work with Skyhive, which their big thing is trying to help people better understand skills they have and skills they can get. And they tell us that their system lets people upload their resumes or create a resume, and then automatically identifies skills that they have based upon their experiences. And from what they tell us, the average person using this self-identifies 10 to 12-ish skills that they have. But because people don't recognize all the skills they actually have from the work that they do, generally the system finds 35 to 45 skills total that people have and just didn't think about as skills, many of which would fall under the kinds of proclivities that you're talking about.
Did anyone put something on here that they'd like to share out loud? I don't know who wrote what, so I can't voluntold you.
Or if
I didn't-
anyone has, oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, David. I didn't write it, but I actually think the point about like using it to engage employer partners and like have them think about job descriptions and all that is really, really powerful. Because I think often we work with small businesses who just don't have the bandwidth to think through it. And so this is like a very useful tool on that side. I think that I actually really hadn't considered that before.
Thanks, Jen. And again, if anyone has something that doesn't quite fit in a sticky note conveniently and wants to just share aloud, we'd love to hear that.
All right, Dave, I think activity has maybe slowed down here.
Indeed. So we will, of course, leave the link up and we will reshare. So if anyone has any additional things they want to put in the Jamboard or anything about this that they want to share with us in a non-sticky note format, please feel free to share after the meeting. That's all for the main session, but before we go into our action items next steps, just want to see if there are any lingering questions about IREC that people want to ask now. Let Mary and Joe know that if anyone has any additional questions, suggestions, or anything else, that send those to them and they'll get us some answers or feedback. Great. As always, feel free to email your questions. So for next time, a few things as always, we're going to share the registration link for the next meeting, which will be March 3rd. We will, after a very cold and COVID-filled January, make sure that we get working groups meeting more regularly. In February, we will send out a survey. And otherwise, we're going to share out a few links that we talked about so that we can get your input. Several of the groups are working on things where it's useful to get additional ideas, additional suggestions. So we want to get that happening in February. Other than that, don't have anything else want to add from our end, but want to make sure that if anyone had any questions or suggestions on any of the things shared today, if it's easier to do an email, great. If you want to set up a call, Carrie and I and others are happy to talk. Carrie, did you have anything else to add?
The last thing I'll say is just, and you may have mentioned it earlier, Dave, if there's anybody on the call today, I do see a few new names that has not had an opportunity to choose a working group. There are 4 working groups that you saw earlier in the meeting reporting out. We have a form. I'm going to also drop that in chat. And if you go to that link, you can select into one of the working groups, and Dave and I will make sure that you are included in the outreach list for that working group. And I think that's it. You see on the screen, we have some things on our agenda for the next few months, and just underscoring Jen Mitchell's reminder up front about the partnership intent to lead letter. We'd like to get that from folks so that we can have targeted outreach around the design and next steps of the network, like developing the logic model and things like that. It's going to be a core group that help drive those things forward. So thank you, as always, for being at the table with us. It's been great to work with you and get to this stage. We've accomplished a lot of great things as a network together, and there are good things ahead.